Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. A bit of a surprise. We're still dealing with monsters, but we're dealing with different monsters. Or does it really matter because it's still fantasy monsters? We have been making a lot of 5e monsters or 2025 monsters and doing the stat blocks, but now today we're doing Shadowdark. That's right, Shadowdark monsters, how to build them. Now I've built a few and I've done a lot of work to figure out how to do this. So yeah, and I know that the developer has also done that. So let's see what I've come up with, and maybe that'll help you develop your own. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll and grab some food, some drink, get your ideas flowing. And this live stream is actually in conjunction with AJ Picket. For those of you who are unaware, this is part of a project that the two of us are working on. So let's get moving, shall we? Hi, welcome to HowtoRPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about creating or making or building your own Shadowdark monsters, doing the stat block. Now the stat block for Shadowdark is very stripped down, very simple, and there is guidance in the book on how to do that. Like if you look at the book that she has provided, I would say about 50% of the information you require to make the monsters. But she also, if you may not be aware, but some of the rules that she sets in place or guidelines she sets in place, she actually does break when she's making monsters. Because I went through every single monster in the core Shadowdark book and did a lot of statistical mathematics to figure out what was going on, and I developed a table. So today I'm going to show you that table, explain what's going on here, and make it clear too that this table is probably going to have to be modified, because I don't think, like most monster mathematics, I don't think it's necessarily finished. Okay, and then we're going to make a monster. So that'll be interesting. This monster is a monster created by AJ Picket. It is actually a real creature called the Velvet Worm. I'm going to get back to that very shortly. It's a creature from New Zealand, believe it or not. So let's go through the table that I've created for today so you can see what's going on, and hopefully that will give you a better idea of how to go about doing your own stuff. Thank you for being here, Fred Huber. I do appreciate it. And I'm not sure how popular this sort of thing is going to be, but this is where I was honestly working on a book for 5e or 2025 in terms of monster stat blocks, but apparently we're doing Shadowdark, so that's fine. That's a lot quicker to do, hopefully. Anyway, so this is the table that I have created. Okay, now this is based off, as I said before, some of them, about 50% of the information in the Shadowdark core rulebook. But again, the guidance around that is not complete, and as I said, the guidance you get is sometimes broken, right? So it's not clear. So this is relatively up to date. I've been working on it recently. So monster level down the side here on the left, from 0 to 10. You'll notice I haven't gone beyond level 10, primarily because monsters with a monster level beyond 10 are usually, there's no rhyme or reason as to what the heck is going on with the mathematics. I looked at them and I was like, you can't do anything with this. This is definitely ported over from a couple of different sources, and she's probably drawn her inspiration from, I would say, 3 different things. So I didn't go beyond level 10 because I thought it was really completely useless to you. It would be too hard to define. So one of the things I discovered is that it looks to me like Kelsey has designed her monsters based off basic and advanced Dungeons and Dragons, like, you know, whether it's AD&D, I suspect a lot of second edition, you know, like I believe that second is the first one that she came across when she was playing, and that's more than likely where a lot of her numbers are coming from. Specifically in terms of the hit dice, the number of hit dice sort of determines roughly what level your monster will be, but that's not always the case. Okay, I'll make that clear too. The other thing is, I noticed she's definitely pulled from what I think are the 5e monster manual, like the 5e monster stat blocks. I think she's pulled a lot of information from there. But definitely feel like AD&D overruns a lot of that, or at least Basic and AD&D have overrun a lot of the creation in terms of maths. She's tried to flatten it all out. So you've got a lot of different sources. You've got the source of AD&D, you've got 5e, and then you've got obviously what is play testing. So she's play tested, so she said, for 3 years. So she's probably discovered a few things along the way that don't quite match up, because like everything, you have to play test. So attack bonuses. What seems to be the going thing is, a 0 level monster, which I think is completely a waste of your time, but I've put it in here because I know people want to create them. They're usually going to have about a 0 or a 1 as their attack bonus. Sometimes that is related to their strength or their dexterity, but not always. Okay? But you usually won't find a creature with a strength bonus or a dexterity bonus higher than 1 in this case, because it wouldn't make any sense. As far as I can tell, that's usually not what's going to happen. The number of attacks, 1 to 2. 2 would be unusual, but you can get 2. 1 is more likely, okay? And then a D4 or D6 for your damage. You're usually only going to have 1 hit point for a 0 or challenge, a monster level of 0. You usually don't have anything higher than that, okay? One of the other interesting things that I discovered is it is very rare to see a negative constitution modifier on a monster. You can get them, but it's usually a spellcaster in most cases. Armor class can range anywhere from probably 7 to 13. These numbers in yellow are in yellow because I am not completely convinced that this is figured out properly, okay? And the bandwidth for a lot of this is a lot wider than other game systems like Pathfinder and 5e in 2025. The bandwidth, for the monsters is a lot wider, and there's reasons for that. And then you have poor quality or normal in terms of treasure, which is probably more likely to be poor. And then now this list of numbers here, lowest stat modifier it's not that important. It's useful to me. It probably won't be to you. Highest stat modifier is usually here. Now I've put down a +2, but I found that +2s didn't, as I said, tend to be in dexterity or strength. They can be in other areas though, which is unusual, but it can happen. It's anyway, so that's what I found with regard to 0 level monsters. Now for a level 1 monster, you're probably getting a 0 through to a 2 for your attack bonus. Level 2 monsters, 0 through to 3. You see the range is quite wide even as you go up. For level 3 monsters, it's 0 to 4, and for a level 4 monster, 0 to 5, and level 5 is 0 to 6, and level 6 monsters, 0 to 7. Now I base this on the sample monsters in her monster manual, which there are about 230 something monsters in. There's a lot of monsters. She's crammed a lot on there. But then we get a jump. Something changes around level 7. Level 7 monsters primarily seem to have, a 5 through to an 8 for their attack bonus. And then something like a level 8 monster will have a 5 to a 9. Level 9 monsters, a 6 through to a 10. And then, and I didn't find a lot of monsters that really had a 10. That was not necessarily that common. And then level 10 monsters, 7 to 10. Seems to be the range that we're working with. Now I've had to sort of, because when I first got the data, it was not as clean as this. I had to clean it up. Because obviously, with only 230 something monsters, that's not every example of a monster for every monster level. So I had to sort of take it and flatten the line out a little bit so that there's a progression. Because what you get is these holes along the monster levels that aren't really it's not a progression. So I had to adjust that. Now the number of attacks is clear. She's made it clear in the book. I noted that down, and there's not much to say other than monster level 0 through to 3 is going to have 1 or 2 attacks. If your monster is level 4 through to 6, then it's going to have 2 or 3 attacks. And then if it's a monster from 7 through to 9, then it's going to have 3 or 4 attacks. And then if we're dealing with level 10, it's going to have 4 to 5 attacks. Damage output, The brackets are very similar in terms of the attacks, so you'll notice that they're, how she's clumped it. I think the number of attacks and the amount of damage a monster does is very much related to the range of monster. Okay, so from 0 through to 3, it's going to be either a D4 or a D6. For level 4 monsters through to level 6 monsters, we're getting a 6-sided dice and an 8-sided dice, so you pick one of those. And then for a level 7 monster through to level 9, you're getting a D8 to a D10. And then level 10 is a little odd. You're going to get a D12. But you could also have combinations or multiple dice that could be made up of a D4, D6, D8, D10, depending on what you're doing. And I think that's primarily to deal with things beyond level 10, rather than actual monsters that are a level 10 monster. Anyway, one of the things that is very much connected and tied, I've discovered, though, to your monster level in Shadowdark, is hit points. The range of hit points is very, very strict. It's still got a band, but it's still much tighter. So I think that the true measure of a monster tends to be around its hit points, and that's really just a timer, how long they will stay in the fight. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. As I said, monsters of 0 level, they tend to have just 1 hit point, and that's it. Okay, and that might be with a +1 Constitution modifier, or it might be with a 0 Constitution modifier, but you'll probably never see anything outside of that range. Level 1 is probably going to have between 3 and 8 hit points, with the most expected number being a 4. So the 3 represents there could be a -1 on it. It doesn't come up that often, honestly. It's very, very rare with hit points that I see a negative modifier. But there were a couple of examples, so I've built that in. But you're normally going to get a 4. It'd be very unusual to have an 8 at level 1. A Constitution modifier like that would be a +4 modifier for con. It's not likely, but it could happen. And then level 2, you normally have a 9, okay, but it could be anything from an 8 to a 13. Level 3, it's more likely to be a 13 for level 3 monsters, but you could have anything from 12 to a 17, although I think 13 to 17 is much more likely. Level 4 is going to be 18 or 17 through to 22. Level 5, it's 22 hit points, usually, most of the time. But it could be anything from 21 through to 26. Level 6 monsters, probably 27 hit points, but it could be 26 through to 31. And you'll notice the increment is you take the formula that she's given you, which is not in the book, for those of you who are wondering. It's down the bottom of the table. I'll go over it in a second. So level 6, I said, so 27 hit points usually, 26 through to 31. Level 7 is going to be 31 hit points usually, 31 through to 35 would be your bracket. 8 is 36 hit points, which is 35 to 40 hit points. And then level 9 is going to be 40 hit points, probably 39 through to 44. And then level 10, it's going to be probably about 45 hit points, which would be 44 through to 49. You're much more likely to find a monster at the higher levels and the higher bandwidth for the hit points too. You're more likely to get a higher Constitution modifier, generally. Okay, armor class is nuts, crazy nuts, honestly. It was a mess. I had to change this because it was so chaotic. So it's all over the place. So there's a lot of room for movement for armor class. Doesn't seem to be a huge factor with this game. So 0 level monsters, 7 to 13. Level 1 monsters, 7 through to 15. Level 2 monsters, 7 to 16. Level 3 monsters, 8 through to 17. Level 4 monsters is the same. And so is level 5 monsters. And then we get your level 6 monsters to level 7 monsters are going to be either a 9, something like a 9 through to an 18. You see the bandwidth it's so massive. And then level 8 monsters, it's 11 through to 18. Level 9 monsters, it's 12 through to 18. And then level 10 monsters 12 through to 19. Difficulty class is always an odd one. I found that 0 level monsters tend to have 9. That seems to be what they have all the time. But level 1 can be anything from 9 through to 18, and that is the case right through from level 1 all the way through, would you look at this, all the way through to level 9. Like, it could range and vary a lot. I think what is going on here is there's something going on with dexterity and strength DCs. So the difficulty class, or DC, for monsters and their abilities, I noticed that things that are dex and strength tend to be a much higher the level of the monster, because it assumes that probably your characters have got high dexterity and high strength more often than not, and that's where you're putting your points. So those tend to be quite high rather than the low end or low band. And then level 10 is 14 through to 18. Now the treasure, it's really annoying when you try to figure out treasure for monsters. It's not really clear. It is actually tied into creating monsters. It's not an encounter building. And one of the problems with Shadowdark is it's got a contents page but no index. So it's actually really difficult to find shit in here. I love the game, but the book could be organized a bit better. Anyway, so level 0 through to level 3 is usually poor to normal, and then normal treasure piles tend to be level 4 through to level 6, and then if you've got a monster of level 7, they tend to be right through to level 9. It tends to be normal or fabulous for them, and then the last one, level 10, tends to be fabulous through to legendary, so you don't usually get poorer quality treasure piles. Now, the low stat modifier and the high stat modifier, again, this was all over the place. I had to sort of play around with it. You'll notice that right through from levels 0 through to 8, minus 4 is possible. They do come up. Probably not in the thing that they are really good at, but they definitely do come up. And then level 9 and level 10, minus 3s, okay? Level 0 monsters, the highest stat I've seen, as I said, is a +2. But level 1 to 2, +3 is quite a common thing to see. And that's not always in the thing that they're attacking with. So when you see a +3, that doesn't necessarily equate to the +3 is in something like strength or dexterity, because it's too far out of the bracket for the attack bonus. But it could be in something else. And then we look at level 4 modifiers. The highest stat tends to be from level 3 monsters through to level 5 monsters. And then +5 tends to be from level 6 through to level 8. And then level 9 to 10 is a +6. +6 is really quite unusual. It doesn't come up that much at all, even for a level 10 monster, and heck, even for level monsters that are higher than 10. Now, how do you work out your hit points? She doesn't tell you in the book, but she did tell you in a video, if you were watching the right video, how to do this. Hit points for a monster are determined this way. It's a 8-sided dice, and you don't roll the dice for your monster. What you do is you take the average, which is 4.5. You multiply 4.5 by the monster level, okay, and then you add the constitution modifier once, and that is how many hit points your monster has. So that is how you go about building a monster, as far as I can tell. And we are going to go over and start looking at building a velvet worm, and I'll explain that process. I'm sorry that this has been very crunchy and very mathematical. For those of you who want to see this table and get a copy of it, you really need to make it clear to me that that's what you want, because I want to make it, I want to really say this is, as far as I'm concerned, this table is not definitive. It is what I've done based on the fact that I've got some mathematics experience and training, and so I can do something with it, but it's not necessarily perfect. So if you want the table, you need to let me know. And then I'm going to say right now, it is not definitive. Okay, you will have to check it and test it anyway, just like I will. DM Mastery. How's it going, DM Dungeon Mastery? Some Shadowdark content. Of course, you knew it was coming, buddy. It was coming. Actually, AJ Picket is responsible for saying, Fred, I've been trying to get AJ to do a monster book for so long, and the day has come, and he said, I want to do Shadowdark, and I said, that's fine, I'm good with that. And so I've got a picture of a monster that he's drawn. I've got the lore for the monster, which is just a very small, brief rundown, and I've done part of the stat block, which I'll show and explain how I built. Quit up, how you doing? Kelsey really needs to pump out a creator's kit guide or something. Quit up, I think she's leaving that to other people to do, but it would be a very smart idea. I absolutely agree. Yeah, absolutely. It would be a good idea, but I'm sure the day will come. Pale Rider, I have never played Shadowdark, so I had to say no, but I have created plenty for early editions. That's all good. You spelt armor with a U, like I do. The Americans will come for you. If the Americans have an issue with the way that I spell, I will remind them I live in New Zealand. I'm a New Zealander. I'm not an American. If you are American and you're using modified English, that's fine. That's what you use in your country. I can't do that because it messes with me too much. If you come for me and go on about the spelling, I'm going to point out that you're spelling it wrong. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, let's go and have a look at what AJ has presented. So AJ was doing some work, and he's been drawing like a mad bugger. I've told him do one monster a week, or maybe two at the most. And he's trying to do a monster every single day. This is his velvet worm. Okay, so this is the monster. Now I need to take that monster and show you what it has been turned into. And this is very early days, people. But expect more of them to come, because he's very hot on the idea of continuing this process and getting things made. So I am fine with that. So this is where I am. We have a Google document that the two of us have been working on, and he's been dropping stuff in there, and so have I. Here it is. Bum, bum, bum. So you'll notice that it is obviously a first draft. We have talked about monster lore and what needs to be there. I don't need to explain to AJ Picket how to write monster lore for Shadowdark. We had a discussion about, like, what do we really need? And we discussed that probably 1 page per monster would be the way to go if we were making a monster manual. Now, with quarter of the page being art, quarter of the page being the stat block, and half the page being monster lore, because monster lore is what helps you make stories and develop adventures, and dungeon masters need that. That is vital. So there are a bunch of questions here. These are things that I've gone on over before. These are things that AJ will probably work on, but I will also be working on as well, because we communicate and talk about the stuff a little bit, pretty much every week, at least, maybe times more than that. So this is the Velvet Worm. I've taken what he gave me, which was basically a name and 2 sentences, or 1 sentence, something like that. A purple, soft-skinned giant centipede with 2 large antennae. The worm sprays jets of sticky acid. So I then took that, and he gave me his version of a stat block, which I think was based off 5e rather than Shadowdark, and so this is how I've built it. I've based the Velvet Worm off the giant centipede in Shadowdark. Okay, so if you're wondering where I started with this, I didn't just okay, let's just go. No, I thought, well, let's find a monster, because Kelsey talks about trying to base it on something that already exists. So it would be sensible to base it on something she's already created in terms of a monster. So I looked at the giant centipede. It's a level 1 monster, so I said, okay, fine, let's go with level 1 monster. And that's where we started. Then I looked at the nature of the creature and the armor class of the centipede. Now, the armor class of the centipede is an 11. Now, this is essentially an armored creature. Okay, It is covered in an armor plating, and this one is not. And you'll notice that I've still left the armor class at being 11. But I've thought about it more and more, and if it's a soft, skinned creature, it probably doesn't have a great armor class. It probably doesn't have the armor class of a centipede. A centipede is armored. It's a lot tougher. This is soft-bodied, so it's probably going to be a bit more difficult to deal with. So what we're going to do is I'm going to drop this down to a 10. Okay, down to a 10. Now you'll notice with the table I was looking at, level 1 monsters, armor class can range from anything from 7 to 15. I did not like... There are very few occasions where there is a monster that has an armor class less than 10, I discovered. They tend to be rare. There are things like oozes can often have them, and so can like undead creatures, like a zombie, but they don't come up a lot. So I think 10 is probably a good number. Okay, going along here, hit points. Okay, so let's just highlight this, bold. And 4 is quite normal for a challenge rating, not a challenge rating, a level 1 monster in Shadowdark. There's nothing wrong. That is exactly the same hit points that the giant centipede had. So I'm like, okay, let's just stick with that. Let's not screw around with it. He didn't give me anything to indicate that I needed to worry about having a higher constitution. I think that's relatively average. So we'll leave it as being an average thing. Its number of attacks, so bold. So you'll notice again, level 1 monster usually is going to have about 4 hit points beneath anything between 3 and 8. Okay, the next thing on here with regard to our creature is they usually have between 1 and 2 attacks. If you see off the table, 1 or 2 attacks. Okay, so what do? We've got 1 bite. They do bite you. They can hurt. In real life, a velvet worm is not going to really hurt a human being, but this is a fantastical one. So they will bite you and they will hurt you. I decided that a +1 is probably the best number. I honestly think that if you're going to give your monster in Shadowdark an attack bonus, give it an attack bonus equal to its level. You can vary it one way or the other, but I think that is the smartest way to go. Is just go with that, and don't worry about everything else. Okay. All right. So, and then usually you're going to be doing, since you're between 0 and 2, you're usually doing about a D4 or D6. I felt like the bite is probably not as powerful as the jet of acid, so I made it just a D4. Okay, or you can use the spray, and I probably need to make sure I include a range for this, because the spray otherwise would just be shooting it at within close range, right? Rather than, it needs to be something that's ranged in some way, and I believe there is a way of structuring that, if I can remember. Yes, that's right. It goes, you do it, you put it in, and then you put your range after, and then you put the attack bonus. Okay, so spray should be bracket near. Did I get it? Where did I miss it? I've typed it in and I didn't get anything. Try again. Should be near. So that is the range of our spray, and we might just call it, acid spray and be done with it. Acid spray. There we go. Sticky acid. And though that's our damage, I want the damage to be a bit higher. I want the attack bonus to be pretty similar to the bite. And then it's got a slime effect, okay, which is very, very similar to the centipede, which is why I selected it. Its movement is near, so let's go here. Attack, 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 attack. The attack string is, yep, I think that's right. I think I've got that all correct. 1 there plus, yes, that is the correct way of formatting it. Okay, next. Movement is near, so most monsters use near as their movement. You can get double near, but they have to be very fast. No monsters ever have something as silly as far, and Kelsey points this out. It also climbs, so it can go up surfaces, so you don't need to worry about You don't need to worry about it making checks and so forth. It is naturally able to do that. So I included in brackets climb. So its strength, I decided it wasn't a strong monster, so it's got a -3. You'll notice that is based off the centipede, because this is so similar to the centipede if you ask me. It's got a dexterity modifier of +1, but that is the centipede dexterity. And I think we should make that a 0. And that will help our armor class match up, because armor class, even with a monster, is usually 10 plus the dexterity modifier. So we'll make this a 0. That doesn't hurt our attack bonus, because it is not unusual for a monster to have, you know, a strength modifier and a dexterity modifier that do not relate to the attack bonus. That's all right. Constitution. I'm going to leave it as just being a 0. Let's just say it's average. Doesn't need to be anything special. Intelligence, I decided to leave it as a -4, and AJ seemed to be fairly happy with that. I did change the wisdom. The centipede is a -3, and I've made it just a +0. I've just given it average, okay? And its charisma is a -5, so I've left that as well. Its alignment, I decided I would leave the alignment pretty much as neutral. Most monsters tend to be neutral rather than evil. This is not really an evil creature. And then we have our strength. We have our level of our monster. So that's it. That's essentially the way that I've constructed it. And you'll notice, even if you look at the high and lows of your stat modifiers, rather than ability modifiers, for a level 1 monster, can range anywhere from a +4 to a +3, and we've from a -4 to a +3. So, and that's exactly kind of what we wind up with here. Like it ranges within that. So we're all good. We're still within the bracket of that table, but you don't need to worry so much about stat modifiers, honestly. Next, the slime ability is essentially the poison ability that the centipede had, and I decided to leave it almost identical. The only thing I changed was the word poison and made it slime. Okay, that's the spray, the acid spray, the slimy jet that it shoots out. But there's another ability that AJ had pointed out the Velvet Worm needed to have, and that is it's immune to mind-affecting magic. So I've just called that impervious. I found that she's used the tag impervious for a lot of things where you're using immunity. So it's impervious to mind-affecting magic. And that is the Velvet Worm. I've built a lot of it, obviously not in the live stream. I just wanted to explain how I went about doing it. And because I'm a tease, I'm going to tease you because I started working on another monster, the Baramaram. I'll deal with that next week. And I've made a couple of other monsters too, using the structure that Kelsey has put forward. I made a gargantuan fiddler crab for an adventure not so long ago. AJ Picket made a prehistoric giant jungle snail and the stat block for that. I made a mimic swarm. For those of you who are wondering, are you serious? Did you make a... Yes, I did. I made a mimic swarm. I wanted to be able to do that because there's nothing better than having a mimic swarm that disguises itself as coins. Anyway, I made a Zorn, which of course is, I think it's an IP monster, so you're probably not going to see it beyond this page. It's not going to go anywhere else. Now, AJ has come up with a whole bunch of other ideas that I'm supposed to work through, such as the giant land clam, the cactus urchin, the glass mimic, the delicious pink ooze. For those of you who are aware of what the delicious pink ooze is, it is a monster specifically made by AJ, and it probably will wind up being one of the monsters I work on very shortly. The lurper, the flaming squillick, there's a whole bunch of these things, and he's got about 50. I think he went a bit nuts during the last week, and he wrote down 50 different monsters. So I've got to work my way through all these little suckers, and I thought what I would do is each week I'll come back and show you how I went about going and building these things, unless, of course, the list gets longer, which means that I might be here for a while. I'm not going to build everything in a live stream, but yeah, that should be the basic gist of building your own Shadowdark monsters if you're wondering how to go about doing it, and it doesn't feel like the book has quite enough to get you there. Essentially, a table like this table is probably going to do most of the work for you, and then the rest of it is really going to be based off, what do I base my monster on? What is its base chassis? And then go from there. And that's how you do it. Would you believe it? Dun dun dun. And yeah. Now, what will be happening? I'm going to put the stat block for the Velvet Worm up onto my Patreon. So will AJ Picket, probably with the art as well. I won't be including the art on my Patreon because it's not my property. And I've had a discussion about AJ about this, and we're going to keep that very separate. So yeah, just give me a second. I'm having a bit of a lurgy day. Let's go through chat very quickly and see what you have to say, and then yeah, I'll be back next week. Maybe it'll be the Baramaram, maybe it'll be something else. I know AJ was drawing 3 other monsters the other day, so he's probably got something else cooked up. Next. AJ doesn't know how to go slowly. No, AJ, I was like, AJ, we can take 100 days to make a monster, and that would be too fast. I said, I'm not full-time. I know you're full-time, but you still got to run your YouTube channel. And so I was all ready for it. Look, let's just say it's going to take us 9 months or a year. And him going slow it doesn't work. So he's probably not going to go slow. Okay. So I'm going to try and keep up with him. That'll be interesting. Origins. Native to the world, some have been domesticated by the dwarves as guard dogs and pets. You can do whatever you like, Pale Rider, with the monster. I couldn't friggin' care less. That's up to people running the table. You know that's the game master, dungeon master. You decide what the monsters are, how they're connected in your world. I just want to make sure that you have something to play with that is fun and different, and that is what we're going to try to do. Problems. Yes, the time changes. I believe they're coming up very shortly, so it's going to be very interesting. Not enough of a mind for it to be affected by mind control. I think he was trying to explain it to me, and I didn't quite understand, so I'm going to have another chat with him, which will probably be happening very shortly. Could an assassin harvest organs from the Velvet Worm? Matthew, probably. I mean, I don't see why not. You want to get the acid glands, don't you? Where the acid is being formed, so you can use it for something nasty, correct? I'm assuming. Harvesting parts of the creatures can never get covered well in the rules. A Kickstarter was made for the rules on just how to harvest bits of creatures, and it's a big book and still incomplete. The problem is, I don't think you should make a rule system for it. I think it is something that you should just leave the dungeon master to figure out. Do you know what I mean? It's probably the best way to go. Sepultra. Sorry, I'm going to get this name wrong. Sepultra. Sepultra? I think I pronounced that incorrectly. Anyway, I'm going to end this poll. This is a very short one. They're all going to be very short. I am probably not going to go over the table every single time, but I will go over the monster that I've created, okay? And the one that AJ has put forward to be created as a stat block. Oh, you already shifted your clocks? Interesting. Good to know. Good to know. Anyway, I'm going to get going. I'm going to leave you with AJ's Velvet Worm because that is the monster that he's presented, and we decided that would be the first one. And there'll be more to come next week. So, thank you for watching and listening. Thank you so much for everybody who took part in the poll. Do you make your own Shadowdark RPG monsters? No, 50%. Well, I'm hoping that you will now. Just watching, 25%. Yes, 18%. Incomplete, 6%. Great. Okay, so thank you to all of my patrons who support me on Patreon. I really do appreciate it. I'll put this up onto Patreon. If you're interested in using it, you can. And then also really big, huge thank you to AJ Picket, who's finally decided he's going to make a monster book. Thank God, the day has come. I've been talking about it for ages, but he seems to be very motivated about this, so that's good news. I want to thank everybody in chat who's been chucking in their feedback. Fred Huber, Matthew, Pale Rider, Negative Space, Quad Up, Sepulatra, I think that's right, Sepulatra, and DM Dungeon Mastery. Back next week for more Shadowdark monsters. We'll make something else. Today was the Velvet Worm. And I also want to say, look, I'm going to be probably on Discord a lot working on these things. You are welcome to come and join me on Discord if I'm, online in a chat room. Come and hang out, have a chat, shoot the breeze, talk about whatever you want to talk about. I will probably still be working, but if you're all right with that, that's cool because, I kind of have to do that. It's just part of the parcel. You never stop. You just keep going. Right. Got to find the time sometime. So my Discord is included. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.